Okay, so if you are a longtime viewer of Drive Home reviews, you know that there are certain things that make up my movie-going persona. Certain things that I've complained about or stated or gone on and on about at length that become part of my adorable quirks. Matter of fact, I think I've done this exact same intro before, but I don't care. For instance, I don't tend to enjoy modern day comedies. I am bored by the Lord of the Rings films. I have become tired of Star Wars. And probably the one that I get the most razzing about is I do not prefer horror movies. It is not to say that I don't like horror movies. It's to say that they are not my cup of tea. I don't like a lot of the things that are done in them. They are not things that I go to for entertainment, not things that I enjoy. And my best friend is, he's a big time horror movie fan. He's always trying to get me to watch these horror movies. And, he's right about a lot of them. A lot of them do have great stories or great concepts to them, but they just aren't for me. But that's not to say that every now and then one doesn't slip through the cracks. That one doesn't catch my eye or catch my attention and stay with me to the point where genre doesn't really play a part. It's kind of like if you look at I think a well-rounded music selection has a little bit from everything. Even if you're not a big heavy metal fan or country fan or rap fan, I'm sure you can find at least one sampling of each that you're like, hey, that's pretty good. And so it is with 2013's Haunter, starring Abigail Breslin. Now, this is one that my buddy Matt turned me on to, my best friend. He actually had me watch it. And I found it incredibly interesting, very different from what I was expecting, and something that makes good use of the horror tropes and uses it to tell a more interesting story. Now, I should say right away, that rhymes, that this review will include spoilers. Because what I find interesting about this movie is its story, the layers of the story, the mystery that it presents, and you can't really talk about those things without talking about how they grow from one point to the next. So I'm going to try to avoid big ones, but the fact of the matter is I'm going to talk spoilers. So if you don't want it ruined for you, if you want to come into it fresh, I recommend it. Go check it out. Watch that and then come back and watch this. If you're not going to do that, keep in mind that's there. You've been warned. Off we go. All right, so Haunter. So let's start with the basics. What is the film about? What's the story? Well, our story focuses on a young girl played by Abigail Breslin, Lisa. It's the day before her birthday, and when we meet her, when the film opens, she is waking up. She seems like your everyday sullen teenager, very, dissatisfied with the world around her, tired of all the uncool things, her little brother wanting to play Pac-Man, her mom making the same thing every day, the family routine, the things that you would associate a sullen teenager being sullen about. But what we quickly come to realize through her dialogue and through, visual cues is that she isn't a sullen teenager simply because, she's bored with life. She's a sullen teenager because it's the same day over and over and over again. So yes, we do have a Groundhog's Day thing. boy, a lot of movies have used that trope recently, haven't they? A lot of movies, especially in the horror genre, have had a good time with the, repeating day thing. But we find out that she has been reliving this same day over and over and over again for however long. She's the only one who realizes it. Her parents, her brother, none of them seem to understand what's going on. Okay, so creepy enough. You also notice that the house is covered by a thick fog. There's a fog outside. You can't see anything else. Right away you're kind of clued into what's going on. And as Lisa is living through her day over and over and over again, little clues start popping up. She starts hearing voices. She finds doors behind the washer. She starts feeling like she's not alone. All the typical signs of the ghost story. So where this film deviates, and why I tend to enjoy it, is what we, through trial and error and all this, and big spoiler country coming up here, is that Lisa is the ghost. And she is living in the same house as a modern day teenager and a modern day family. And the ghost she thinks at first that she's communicating with is actually the live person. So she is actually the haunter. But then we discover another level to this little rat trap, in that the ghost, another ghost, that of a serial killer who's lived in the house before Abigail Breslin did, his spirit is still there. His spirit, it turns out, is the one that possessed her father and had him kill the family, and he is now in the process of doing the same thing to this modern day girl named Olivia. So Abigail Breslin now has to kind of solve the mystery and stop the killing before she can move on into whatever is outside the house. So, convoluted story, kind of all over the place. But I'm going to be honest, and I'm not doing it justice with my rambling, unprepared, breakdown of the plot. For me, the story is what makes this a forgotten gem. I really like the story of this film. I like the idea of the multiple layers of haunting, that you got real world, one ghost, then another ghost. I love the mystery of what is going on. There's multiple mysteries. First of all, what is going on to Lisa and her family, what went on previous, what's going on in the present. In all honesty, the mysteries are kind of easy to unravel. It's just the details that you might not know right off the bat. But there's still an interesting mystery which plays around with a lot of the kind of cliches and tropes of the ghost story and the horror movie genre. Again, I've always found the idea that a haunting isn't actually a ghost trying to be mean, but it's a ghost just, bumbling around. I've always found that interesting. One of my favorite movies is a movie called The Time of Their Lives, which is an Abbott and Costello movie where Lou Costello plays a ghost from the Revolutionary War who ends up in a house in then modern day 1940 something, and the haunting that he's doing is just him tripping all over the place and not understanding technology, not understanding radios and all that. But it gives the illusion of this malevolent spirit. And I like that, in this one, the spirit originally is seen to be something scary, something to be afraid of, and then you realize it's not. It's the real world encroaching. It's something nice and good, and that Lisa herself is a nice, good character, but there is something else lurking. So I like that idea, and I like the mystery upon mystery upon mystery. I think that is the strong point of this story. It has the feeling of an old like if an X-Files episode and a Twilight Zone episode really slammed into each other and had a baby, this is kind of what it would look like. And maybe sprinkle in a little of the old that old radio show Suspense, just for good measure. You gotta give, the acting is fairly good across the board, but Abigail Breslin is doing the heavy lifting. She's the star of the film, and she works it. She really, I wish she would do a few more things. She's getting older and aging out of kind of the young girl parts, but she really has always been one of the best young actors working. Even going all the way back to Little Miss Sunshine, Definitely Maybe. She was good in Zombieland, even though I didn't like Zombieland. And she's really good here. She shows off just the depths that she can go. There's a lot going on here physically, mentally. The character's going through a lot of changes and a lot of growing personally and in terms of the larger story. And she really captures all of that, just perfectly. She's very good. I'm always interested to see what she's going to do next. So, the rest of the acting is quite good. I think, I did not write his name down, so I apologize. But the gentleman who's playing her dad, her ghost dad, who's trapped in, the afterlife with her, he does a great job of bouncing back and forth between the great suburban kind of 1980s dad and, someone who's been possessed by a psycho. So he plays the two extremes very, very well. Yeah. I don't know. So why do I like this movie on top of other horror movies? Well, let's just look at it. Number one, again, the story. I think the story is incredibly strong. Incredibly strong, incredibly interesting, holds your interest, and keeps going. Number two, I think the scares are much more psychological than a lot of others. One of the things, and you can call me whatever you want, but one of the things I am not a fan of horror movies is I don't like gore. I've never been a big gore fan. I know it's funny, I watch Game of Thrones, but I don't like blood and guts. I don't like torture and pain. It's not something I like watching or feel like, oh, I'm going to go watch that to relax. When I like a horror movie or a suspense movie, I like suspense. I'm much more of a fan of Hitchcock than I am of any kind of modern day horror, horror gurus, with the exception, of course, of Guillermo del Toro. So this one, there's no gore in this. This is not a gory film. This is all, again, the scares are more psychological. They are more that feeling of hearing a noise that isn't right. That feeling that we all get, especially when we're young. That feeling that something is wrong and you're the only one who really is picking up on it, and everybody else is either oblivious to it or ignoring it. So I think the film captures those feelings very well. So yeah, I think it's a satisfying mystery. It's a satisfying character study. I think it uses its core concept in a new and inventive way, at least as far as I'm concerned. Is this movie perfect? No, it is not. And I think a lot of that falls at the feet of the director, Vincenzo Natali, who's a good director. But let's be honest, this is an independent horror movie from IFC. And independent directors tend to over-direct. And this one, there are large chunks of it where I'm like, this is too much. You're really trying way too hard visually, and using a lot of what have become the horror movie cliches, in terms of directing, the very that kind of thing. The jump scare. He does this one point where Lisa is able to go back in time and see the killer, and how he got started, and the whole thing, the framing is done in a very, almost like it looks like I do when I use Movie Maker and you're trying to make something look old. It just looks, it's a little too cheap looking. It's got frayed edges and grainy, grain effects over the film, and I just think it's too much. I think the film works best when the directing is much more subtle. I feel like this movie from the moment out the gate, it is punching you in the face with something's not right, something's not right, something's not right, something's not right. And I think you could have achieved that with much more subtle visual cues. Much more subtle. Now, the argument can be made that our main character has been living in this repeating timeline for who knows how long, so it's not like she's discovering it for the first time like we are. But I don't know, I just feel like he can't really control himself directorially sometimes, and I feel like the film, as Peter Griffin would say, it insists upon itself, and that tends to take me out of the film more than draw me in. That's a me thing. Some other people that might not bother, but for me it's a little bit of not a deal breaker, but it's something that distracts me. But all that being said, all that being true, I still think this is an excellent film. I think it's a horror movie that I like, so it's doing, at least for me, it's doing something right. Great story, great atmosphere, very original take on a lot of ghost things like possession. It does the possession element very well, where you get the two girls from two different time periods are existing in the same body and are communicating and trying to solve the same mystery. It's really well done in that respect. So this is a horror movie I recommend. So for those who know how much I do not recommend horror movies or don't go see horror movies, that should tell you something. So if you want, turn the lights down low, light a few candles, and enjoy a nice psychological thriller. I enjoy it, and I hope you do too. So that is it for this one. Not one of my longer videos, but I don't think anyone needs to hear me talk any more than I already do. Thanks for coming along, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.